With all the talk of the Olympics and how we were so distracted by the opening ceremony, what else did we actually miss when it came to the Olympics itself? Well, today we're going to be talking about that, talking about what was implemented in Paris to make sure that we kept people safe, that we kept everybody in a very formulated way to where we knew where they were at all times, but also knew that we could just, again, make sure they could get where they needed to go. All in the name of safety, all in the name of control and making sure everyone was where they were supposed to be. Remember, it was a huge gathering of people in a short time in a small location. Does that not remind you of what could happen in some of these bigger cities? What could happen in an event that causes problems? Well, today we're talking about that, because what we saw on the world stage and what we're seeing in the world stage, they're using a lot more control methods in Paris to make sure they know where you are at all times when it comes to your money, when it comes to your digitized footprint, because they want to know, so therefore they're using QR codes. And then therefore also very cashless, to where we're in a different area, so we can't utilize all these different international cashes. We've got to turn around and use only one form, a digital one. And not only that, what if we're closing down certain parts of the city to make sure people stay in only the spots that we allocated for them? We herd them in certain areas to where everyone's together, bam, a blackout happens, and then people go a little frantic. Today we're going to be talking about these things. How the use of the word safety and protocols may be just putting us in a very 1984 kind of state. Let's talk about it today. Hey guys, welcome to the Max. Thank you so very much for being here today. If you are new to the channel, go down here, press subscribe, ring the bell. Give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, that's okay, but let us know what you think about the content of today's video. Now, we have been distracted with the way the Olympics started out with the opening ceremony, very sacrilegious. We talked about that. But what else did we miss? Now, to be honest with you, I'm not a big Olympiad fan. I don't watch it. It stresses me out. It's over-criticalized commentators and just doesn't impress me. To be honest with you, I'm just thinking I have so much other things to do when it comes to living my life. Kudos to the people that are over there, because most of them are Olympians and doing phenomenal jobs, and they've trained their bodies for it. But here's what we've missed. Real quick, we've put a ton of people in a very congested spot. Now, that reminds me of cities, that reminds me of chaos, and that's exactly what happened this week. Well, there was a blackout that took place because parts of the city could not control the amount of people that were there. Well, again, let's go back to the cities that we live in, the liberal areas in our nation and in several other nations. Did you know some of the cities are passing more ordinance to where they want to become more environmentally friendly, which is such a terrible word, because they're tearing down trees, quote unquote trees, and taking away regenerative farmlands to put this metal, wind farms or this metal solar array to where there's no grass, no animals growing, and no trees growing. Isn't that funny? But they call it for environmental services. What it does is put strain on the grids. We've seen that in California. We've seen that especially in some of the areas that don't have a lot of water. Now, what are we talking about here? Well, there was a blackout that took part in Paris. Caused a major shutdown for a long time where people could not utilize what they needed. That's one thing. Now let's take the blackouts aside. Things like that happen. Hey, I was here last night. If you've been watching our vlog channel, we have not been at home. We've been out of state. Well, there was a major storm that come through here and knocked out our power last night. Of course, we always carry stuff that we need, so we were ready no matter what the situation was. So blackouts happen. So, okay, what else happened? What else was the biggest ordeal when it comes to this very overly controlled system? Well, there were certain places that were called gamer zones. Now, what this was to get in certain parts of the city, you had to have a specific QR code. Because they couldn't register everyone coming in and coming out, there was no other way to make it easier and accessible. So you'd already prepay and load your information and download the software to allow you to get to certain areas with the QR code. Now, let's think about that. That is your digitized footprint, because it is tracking you wherever you go. Now, most people did it, no problems asked. They just said, hey, we got to have it, so let's go ahead and download it. So they programmed you to be at this location because you were willing to sacrifice to get to where you wanted to go. You were able to put yourself in a digitized ID. Now, they didn't call it that. They called it a QR code for your access and ease. Well, they put a QR code in there to make sure they knew where you were at all times. So now it's being tracked on your phone or on your device to where they know where you are at all times in these gamer zones. And if you're not allowed to be there, guess what? If you didn't have access, they hold you out of these areas. Now, these areas were not special or specific, but they were utilizing them for other means. So some of the Parisians got very upset because they were not able to use their own river. They were not able to use their own places that they would typically use for transportation or for eating because they did not have specific QR codes. They didn't have the digitized footprint that was already preloaded. Not a big deal. So you're saying, okay, well, what if they have, it's just like anything else. You'd have to have a little badge. The thing about a badge, you can take it off. A thing about having a certain wrist, band, like if you're going to a theme park, you take it off. But it just has form. This was a way for the global community to see how it worked. So therefore, the QR code was phenomenal. It tracked you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to know exactly where you were. Now, is that something that you would buy into? Now think about it. On the stage of non-Olympics, say you just had to go into town, and because towns are getting rampant, and because of chaos and control elements, or because the borders open, so they're trying to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe, especially the citizens of America or a different country. What if all of a sudden the government says, well, we really need you to download this digital ID so that way it gives you passes to shop for the groceries and shop for certain things because we want to make sure our citizens have the first rights to certain things. You don't believe that would actually work? A safety protocol, a security protocol, helping your citizens to get the best of all worlds. And then you download a digitized ID. Now this is already happening in a lot of cities, happening in China for sure. But are you ready for that? This is what they did in the Olympics where they knew exactly where you were at all times. Would you download that if you had to go in certain places in your cities or in your towns or your states? Now before we get to money, just because I believe in safety and security, here's a word from our sponsor today. Today's sponsor is Surfshark VPN. Surfshark develops and humanizes your privacy and your protection across the digital world. We live our world and live our lives on the World Wide Web, on the internet. Well, when we live our life digitally, I want to make sure that just like when I say I want to lock my doors at night and keep us physically safe, I want to lock down what I'm doing online so that way I know that I'm technologically safe, that my data is my data, that my privacy is personal and it's my privacy. Well, that's what a VPN does. Once you sign up for a VPN like Surfshark, when you connect to their network, it blurs and encrypts actually where you're at, what you're looking at, and making sure the data that you're putting into your system is yours only. We go to the internet and we're unprotected. What takes place is these data brokers get our information. This information they can share with all different kind of companies to pretty much sell your data to take advantage of you. Not only can you protect your simple phone, you can protect your desktop, you can protect your laptops, your tablets, anything smart in your house. Get a whole house coverage when it comes to this VPN. Surfshark offers a 30-day back guarantee. So if you don't like what you've got or you believe you're displeased with what they're doing, which I don't believe you will be, they'll be able to return your money. They have 24/7 help. So you can call and get the support that you're needing if you have a doubt or you're worried about something or you don't know how to even hook it up. I promise you, when it comes to your safety, we don't realize how dangerous it is to be on the internet being unprotected. When I'm able to hook into Surfshark, I can use global servers all over the world. They have 3,200 plus servers that they can utilize. So instead of it showing my exact location and pinging me and trying to get my information, I can say that I'm 50 miles away, 100 miles away, 500 miles away to make sure that my information is kept safe. Surfshark is even more than just simply a virtual private network. They've got Surfshark One, they've got Surfshark Antivirus, they've got a Surfshark search engine. So that way every aspect of your technology, your digitized platform, your footprint is kept safe. Why do you put locks on every door? Because you want to make sure that you're safe. Well, there is no different because someone can easily not only get your information, ruin your life, and ruin everything that you've worked hard for by getting your data online. Check out surfshark.deals/themax. Not only are you securing your data, you're getting an extra 4 months for free by using the link below with the keyword code THEMAX. Check out Surfshark VPN
link in the description.
So next, let's talk about, well, we know they know where we're at all times. What about money? Guess what? They were not using just typical credit cards or debit cards or cash in certain areas, especially cash. There was no such thing as using cash or using any kind of paper money in some of these areas. They wanted it all digital. Now, this is the part that I've been pushing you away from for so long. There's different apps that you can download to turn around and have basically your wallet, a digitized wallet on your phone. Even though it seems convenient and easy to use, what are you doing? You are basically allowing the government or that app company or a privatized company to know exactly where you're spending your money at all times. That's something I tell you all the time with this quote-unquote parallel society that they're trying to get you to buy into with crypto. They're knowing all your transactions. Don't believe that someone does not know all your transactions when you're utilizing a device. Now, just like my sponsor, I would definitely have a VPN, or I'd definitely have some kind of form of safety. Use something like that no matter where you're at. But guess what? When you're in certain areas, what they were doing was blocking certain signals to where they knew exactly what information was coming to your device and not coming to your device. That's a big deal. What goes along with that is money. So when people were wanting to use money over there, they had to already preload money on a digitized form or a digitized wallet. They could not use cash. And there was also some credit cards and bank cards that people would traditionally use, because they've used them for years, that would not work. So they had to buy different prepaid versions. They had to buy a more international version. And to be able to consume certain goods, you had to have a certain style money. Now, is that pre-programming? Could be. Because what if all of a sudden you had piles of cash? Well, in certain areas they say, well, no, we're not using cash. Well, cash is cash. Cash is money. Paper dollars, paper whatever currency that people use, coins, whatever. They were saying your money is no good here. Now, first of all, if there is a place where it's this much restrictions, I'm not going to sacrifice my rights to go there. But look at these people. They have went in droves to go there. Now, this is just one thing. Again, let's go back to our cities just in America. Did you know that several cities are looking at the same implementation to know exactly where digital ID, digital footprint of people are, especially when it comes to government fundings? That's what people don't realize. When you buy into government systems, a lot of times they're trying to get you more on a digitized footprint, and they'll call it for record keeping to make it easy for them, but actually what it's doing is tracking you. Same with your money. There's several situations where when you download these apps for digital wallets, they're tracking you because they want to know where your spending is taking place. Companies pay that. Data brokers, they pay for the device to tell them exactly what they want to know, exactly where you're buying goods. Now, it may be for complete honesty and innocence. They may say, well, they know they like you shopping at Walmart. So Walmart's pinging you and they want to make sure that they're giving you enough groceries for this area. Great. But I don't know if everybody's intentions are so honest all the time. So who else is getting my data and information when I'm using my phone to pay for everything? They're knowing everything I'm purchasing and not purchasing. Did you know that you couldn't purchase everything in these areas because there's some stuff that was restricted just for local citizens? So people out of state, out of town, could not turn around and just buy what they wanted. They had to buy what was only allowed for them to buy with the currency that they were allowed to have. So this is a complete overstepping of a bureaucratic system that you never knew you were actually stepping into. That's the thing about what we're living in now. We live in such a digitized world that the convenience elements of what we're putting in our life is actually putting us more into a jail. It's like my animals. You know, I own a farm. When I want pigs or sheep to go to a certain area, now cows are a little bit different, but pigs and sheep are very repetitive animals. They like to be in one place and not move. Well, we're a rotating farm, we're regenerative, so we're moving animals at all times. When I want pigs or sheep to go somewhere, I learned to not feed them in the place they were comfortable with. I learned to feed them in a different location. And as I'm feeding them in that different location, I'm building alleyways. I'm building new fencing to where I can control them as they start moving that way. Till one day, when they finally move and I'm at the point of moving them for proximity to where I want them to go, I learned to put more fences up. So the last time that they go into that new area, I already have a fence ready and it closes them off. They never realized that I was building them and putting them in a different location. They thought they were just going to eat. They thought, well, the convenience element of us going to forage, we just have our leader or our farmer, he's feeding us over here. So for convenience sake, we're going to go over here and eat this food. The whole time I was programming them to move to a different pasture, and I was building fences perfectly to control them. They didn't know that, but it's for their betterment, is what I would say. Now, eventually, these animals will feed me, and it's just part of owning a farm. The purpose of that, though, is this. When we become like sheep, and even pigs, I don't want to use pigs. Sheep is either dumb or big, not good either way. But when we learn to program ourselves to listen to everything else that everybody's telling us, sometimes that convenience, sometimes that ease is actually programming us to be more in control or be more in our own little prisons. What the people that were at the Olympics and still there are doing is they're being contained in certain areas and not allowed to go out of that area because of certain passes, certain barcodes, certain digital IDs, and certain ways to pay for things. If you go out of that area, you don't have those accesses anymore. Are we going to see this kind of system used in a different connotation to where more people are kind of put into certain areas for a certain amount of time? Cities, again, are already starting to implement this. For instance, the movement in China, this is already happening in China. They know everywhere, all the scans, and remember, UK has already tried this too. And people are starting to tear down the little QR readers and all that. But bottom line is, overly, it's being used and it's become very popular because people like the ease and control element that they don't know they're actually in. All the while, what if all of a sudden the barricades start closing off and you're stuck in one location? One more thing. There was a report from Zero Hedge that said that one thing they used is not only digital ID, not only the fact of digitized currency and how you could spend your money and what kind of money you actually had. It was also police zones. There was certain militarization of areas and zones where you could not go. There was a lot more checkpoints. There were certain people that could go certain ways. There were certain people that could go certain ways. Now, again, in a control element, that's not a bad thing. But what if we get so used to this enforcement to where it's just second nature to us, where we don't realize we're in a big fence, like my sheep, thinking I'm running free, and actually I'm not running free, I'm just running in certain areas that they allow me to run into. Now my sheep, again, they are in certain fields. They think they have all the freedom in the world. Ultimately, they're in a pen that I control. Now, I don't want to be sheep, and I'm not trying to deter you from making sure that you're safe and the comforts of having police and sheriff and all that. What I'm saying is this. What we've seen is the more chaos, the more problems we have with immigration, the more problems we have with crime and theft in our cities, the more that our government is starting to say, well, why don't we put more police there? Why don't we put more National Guard there? Why don't we militarize this zone to make sure our people are safe? You don't believe it's happening? Look at New York. The subways were getting so bad, police could not do it. People didn't feel safe, so what did they do? They said, well, because of the chaos, we need more safety requirements here. So they started putting military in the subways. Now we think, well, that's for our safety. And it is. But the problem is we allowed it to get so bad with the crime or with the problem that the solution was over bureaucracy. Is the answer always more enforcement, or is the answer just making sure we enforce the things that we already have on the books? We didn't need military in the New York City subway. We just needed the law to be enforced before it got to that crime wave that we are at right now. What are we seeing in Chicago? What are we seeing in San Francisco? What are we seeing in these big cities to where they're not enforcing the law that's on the books? They're making new regulations, new enforcement, and new protocols to build a new police state or military state that the governments want to put in. We saw this in 2020 more than ever. Do you remember Michigan locking down seeds? Because we couldn't use them, it was dangerous. Do you remember there were certain places that you couldn't go? Do you remember that? Have you seen the footage of Walgreens and all these department stores in certain cities where everything is locked up? You can't even buy anything without an associate coming to open it up to buy your toilet paper or to open it up to buy your toothpaste, because people are used to stealing. The more theft, the more crime calls for the more police state or the more over-regulation, instead of just saying, let's just enforce the laws we already have. Well, that's what's happening in the Olympics. What is happening is people are being placed in certain areas, able to use certain funds only. They have certain barcodes to tell where they're at all times, and then if they're not in the certain areas, the police or the military, the militarization, the bureaucracy knows, and so therefore they try to herd them in certain areas. You don't believe it's happening? Go back and look at the articles of how people are put in certain areas of Paris. We are getting programmed based on safety security measures and to make sure that we've been kept safe. Now, another thing, we're seeing more and more and more wars. We're seeing more and more attacks. Europe just had an attack at a Taylor Swift concert. Israel and Hamas situation just really got serious with a bombing into Iran. Okay, so things are happening to where it allows the government to say, well, look, we want to keep you safe, so you don't need to be in this area. You be in this area. We want to keep you safe. We're having a lot of crime in this part of the city, so instead of enforcing the law and obeying the law and making sure people go to jail if they do something wrong, we're just going to over-regulate that area and put more police or more militarization in this area, more police state, more federal police, basically state police, which is the National Guard. We are seeing the programming just like my sheep and pig. They didn't know that they were moving closer to where I wanted them to go because I was programming them with feet. I was programming them with the thought that they had more security there. I was programming them to say, this is the best place to go and the comfort of where you need to go. All the while, I was just building them in a tighter, more fenced-in location that I wanted. Are you a sheep or pig? I hope not. But the point of what I'm saying is, these people were willing to give up their rights to see something happen, the Olympics. Once in a lifetime, maybe. But how easy is it going to be for governments to say the same thing to you? Well, to keep you safe, we need to put you here. To keep you safe, you need to use this app. To keep you safe, you need to use this money because, man, people will steal your wallet because of crime. So you can't have cash on you. You can't access those kind of debit cards because those debit cards are tied to local banks. They're not as strong and they're not as safe as what this major credit card company that's starting this new digitized currency. How easy it would be to control you by these three things. Digitized footprint with a QR code, which people are using QR codes each and every day. Think of the millions and the things that you do with QR codes. Apps making sure you get free apps, but they're knowing exactly how you're spending your money, where you're going at all times. It's already been proven PayPal was one of those that knew exactly where and how you were spending your money and was reporting it to the government. And then thirdly, controlling you to where you go and where you can't go. We saw these three things used very easy as we were getting herded the whole time in Paris. Now, you think it can't happen to you, and maybe in rural, areas like rural Mississippi, it may not can. But that's why we prep, that's why we take care of our families, because we see it can happen very easy, because now cities are starting to implement it closer and closer. And because more cities are starting to implement certain aspects of QR code reading, of funds and how they're accessed from government or private entity. There are several shops that won't even take cash anymore, cashless society. And then there's certain places you can't go because it's too dangerous, so the police keep most people out of those areas. That herd mentality, that convenience, that safety is a concern is happening right before our eyes. So what do? Well, you learn to be more independent. You learn to keep your freedoms and don't just look for conveniences, because conveniences could be control, just with a different name. Pay attention to what's going on. For instance, things like the VPN that we talked about. Things like keeping yourself safe, not only online, but offline, making sure you have safety protocols for defense. Making sure you keep and recognize your freedoms each and every day. That's how you protect your family. Guys, let me know your thoughts. Am I diving too deep in this? But it made me think, well, how serious is this when we saw every element of control based on a simple location and a simple situation? How easy could government say, we need to use this to make your life easier? And I believe people would, take it hook, line, and sinker. Let me know your thoughts. God bless.